This question is checking to see if you can compare different CPUs and work out which one is faster than the other. So it says state two characteristics, two things, two differences, other than the size of cache memory, because that was talked about in the previous question, that can improve the performance of CPUs, so the speed of CPUs. So these are the things the exam board would accept. There are others, but these are the ones you'd get marks for. 2 marks up for grabs, 1 mark for each difference, each characteristic. So let's talk through each one. First of all, the number of cores or processors. Inside each CPU, sometimes you might just have 1 core or dual core or quad core or 8 cores, and each core can execute an instruction per clock cycle. So if you've got more cores, it means that your CPU can execute more instructions at the same time. So in theory, as you increase the number of cores, your processor is faster because it can do more instructions at the same time. Second thing you could accept for a mark was the processing speed or the clock speed, and that means each core runs at a clock speed. So you have a clock pulse that changes from 1 to 0, and every time the clock changes, each core is able to run a new instruction. So if the clock runs faster, so that means it changes from 0 to 1 in less time, then you can execute or run more instructions per second. So increasing the clock speed would let your CPU run more instructions per second. Then you could talk about the bus width or the word size or the architecture of the CPU, and that means you can have some CPUs that are 32-bit, some that are 64-bit, and that means how many bits of data the CPU can process every instruction. So if you've got a 16-bit processor in an old like arcade game machine or something like that, it can only cope with 16 bits worth of data every clock cycle, every instruction. Or if you've got a 64-bit processor, it can deal with 64 bits every instruction. So as you increase the bus width or change the architecture of the processor, it's the same thing. It means it can cope with more bits every instruction. Final thing the exam board would accept would be the type of cache memory. You've got level 1, 2 and 3. See the previous question if you want an overview of cache memory. Level 1 is the fastest, so if you have more level 1 cache, the CPU will often be faster because it stores more data and instructions closer to the CPU so it can access them in less time. There are other ways to make a CPU faster. It's a huge area of research, but these are the ones that the exam board will accept. If you want to find out more, CPU Boss is really good for being able to compare multiple CPUs and find out all the technical specifications, all the differences and how that affects the different performance. But in terms of this question, all you need to know is any two of these ways to improve the performance of a CPU.